Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us here today on this fantastic discussion that we're about to have here, which is adaptation and, of course, the approach that we are taking in the Sahel. You know, we have seen more than anywhere else on planet Earth, temperatures are rising 1.5 times faster in the Sahel than anywhere else. But it is not just about the heat. There are tons of opportunities in the Sahel that we are yet to unlock. And I think this is where this conversation today will actually drive us to. And of course, today we have very distinguished personalities here. Of course, I will start with my very own, I wouldn't call him boss, but our superior boss, Dr. Elvis Tegem, coordinator of the African Union. And of course, we have a representative from IFAD that have been working with rural communities across the entire Sahel. And of course, the Honorable Minister for Environment of Somalia as well is joining us. And of course, we also have Mr. Charles Kanu Ikeya, of course, who is representing the President of Nigeria, who happens to be the current chair of the Conference of State of Governments on the Pan-African Agency for the Great Green Wall. And of course, we have the UNCCD representatives as well. So we have very distinguished personalities. We will later on be joined by, of course, one of the Great Green Wall ambassadors who is yet to be here. We also have, I would like to recognize the presence of Mr. Ahmed Yusuf, and as well as Jonathan Robinson, also from Civic, who are powering the Great Green Wall Frontline. I'm sure we've all seen this beautiful poster right behind here, which is writing Great Green Wall Frontline. And of course, you know, we understand that there has been the Great Green Wall, but what exactly is the Great Green Wall Frontline? So for a long time, the Great Green Wall has been in the corridors of power. There is a growing political support, but there is a disconnect between the ground ownership of the Great Green Wall and the growing political support. So the frontline movement is actually to transform the Great Green Wall from the corridors of power, and also starting with the ground up, with the communities, kind of working on models that are really going to transform their communities so that we can bridge this gap and turn this vision to reality. So this is what the Frontline program aims, and it's been piloted by Civic in the Gambia. There has been tremendous success being registered. Myself and Maimuna have been working across with remote communities, you know, more than 7 districts across the North Bank region involving 295 villages. And we are very much grateful to African Union for all the support and the coordination that we're doing. And as well, I wouldn't forget to mention the presence of Mr. Ngozi, Madam Ngozi from You Know Us, who has been working with frontline leaders as well. So Dr. Elvis, I would like to pass on to you to kind of give us an overview as the coordinator, and of course, lead us through the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatih. I think mine is just to say on behalf of the Africa Union Commission, to welcome all of us here, keeping by the existing protocols, and to say we are very happy that Somalia has a new ministry for environment and climate change. It's something that we are celebrating today, and I would request all of us to give Her Excellency a hand of applause. And so you know, Somalia remains a cornerstone member state of the African Union, and it was very necessary that we get Somalia to start thinking about. I know they are doing a lot with His Excellency the President. That I had the opportunity to meet with Her Excellency, where he gave us strict instruction on what they want to see us do in Somalia. So it's within that framework that we thought that it was necessary for us to gather here today to talk a bit about the Great Green Wall, the front line, and what we are going to be, what are the plans for Somalia. So with that, I will first call on Her Excellency to give us a note of welcome and to assure us that we are doing the right thing today. Your Excellency.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I am delighted to have here my brother and sisters being here in this great event, and also I'm also delighted. Particularly, I want to recognize that effort of the leadership of Dr. Elvis Paul has committed to make this event possible and working hard to support the ministry reach of the commitment and priorities. Somalia is honored by your presence and the sites event this evening, and particularly by having your audience here and speaks on the theme of the new Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Federal Republic of Somalia, laying down the foundation for environmental sensibilities of the climate change and adaptation of Federal Republic of Somalia. Somalia Green Great Initiative, restore the grid of the land, restore of the green of first forests of Somalia of their natural forever, even more particular of Somalia has been. The President of Somalia has initiated to plant 10 million trees in Somalia in almost last month. One of the most important strategic action we intend to take to implement an initiative of like Great Green Wall in Somalia cooperation with the other African Union member states in order to establish Somalian a player as the international community and advance global community compound of the climate change. Great Green Wall Initiative provide ideal platform with the AU member states, forestry and institution development cross the border institution. The local put admission of the solution would be required to support Somalia, like other member states and the region, has been affected by the droughts. As you know, Somalia almost 4 years been facing the droughts. The nation cannot provide sustainable answering for the climate change condition. We must do the collaboration with the other African Union member states and the rest of the international community. My ministry has one of my priorities competing of the climate change and member of the global community, particularly in Africa. Addressing of climate change, Somalia is thought of enhancing of building resilience, addressing of the aggression and the droughts, development and further resilience of nexus and the climate and security. I want as well to thank for the Somalian situations that been in all these years that facing, and it's very important that we Somalia could be part of a Great Green Initiative. And I want to thank for my sister from IFED that all the support she's been given, and Brother Paul, and from Nigeria, that they're here to support Somalia. And I want to really thank as well for the President of Nigeria and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think without wasting further time, I would go down to Mr. Charles for him to give us his reflection as a representative of the Pan-African Agency.
Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am here to represent the President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. Of course, we would have loved to attend this COP27 because for the past years, you know, he has attended all the COPs, you know, that have taken place. However, due to exigencies of duty, he asked the Honorable Minister of Environment to lead the Nigerian delegation and represent him at this COP27. And so, on behalf of the President who is also incidentally the current chair of the Conference of Heads of States and Government of the Pan-African Agency of the Great Green Wall. I wish to commend Somalia for their initiative. If you look at the geographical location of Somalia at the far east, and Senegal at the far west. So the location of Somalia qualifies the country to be part to be part of the Pan-African Agency for Great Green Wall. We in Nigeria are in support of the aspirations of the government of Somalia and her people. And of course, would give all the needed support for the country, of course, to realize its aspirations. Thank you very much.
Very much. I know that the UNCCD is here, but it's quite exciting always to hear from the UNCCD, as they have been really helping to propel various initiatives across drylands. So I'll invite them actually to share us reflections of...
Thank you, Excellencies. First of all, congratulations for this new assignment. Even though I work for the UNCCD now, since April, I used to work for the crisis management branch of UNEP for the last 20 years. And Somalia was always part of that portfolio. So we were implementing projects in Somalia. It's very obvious to us at that time that Somalia needs nature-based solutions. So it's not just a political crisis, not just a security crisis. It's also a climate-induced crisis. So within that context, the fact that we now have a full Ministry of Environment, that it is considering to be part of the Great Green Wall Initiative is something which UNCCD welcomes and something which I think is a landmark decision. UNCCD has been working with the Pan-African Agency for Great Green Wall for a while, and we are supporting the Great Green Wall Accelerator. And we welcome Somalia to join and receive the services of the Great Green Wall Accelerator, so that whenever you start to engage with the Pan-African Agency, you can be fully capacitated to take advantage of whatever structures are there. Great Green Wall is not just about planting a lot of trees. It's about transforming economies, transforming lives. I think it is being understood more and more, and the fact that Nigerian presidency is now coming up will give it a huge boost, and UNCCD is standing by to support Somalia as well as all other Great Green Wall countries to make it a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I would engage Mr. Tabi Jorda, who has been an ambassador of the Great Green Wall and has done fantastic work across the entire Sahel. But Tabi, today I want you to take us through what is the Sahelian approach when it comes to climate adaptation. The Great Green Wall itself is an adaptation, but as a frontline worker, please take us through some of the models there are. What is the approach that we should take? What is missing from the larger conversation when it comes to adaptation in the Sahel? Because we know that here in the corridors of the United Nations, you know, the race is against 1.5. But in the Sahel, the race is against water. It's either too much or too little at the wrong time. So take us through some of your reflections and the models that there are in the Sahel.
Thank you very much, Kimo. And Due respect to all protocols, and I want to very quickly recognize the presence of the Director General of SEALS, as well as the Director General of the Great Green Wall National Agency of Nigeria, as well as Your Excellencies. I stand on all the respect. And very quickly, I want to say the Sahel is, of course, in the heart of disintegration, climate disintegration. If you understand what climate disintegration means, that the extent to which climate impacts have actually reached the extent where the psyche of people living in this region is being completely affected, where you can even have people suffering from mental challenges as a result of some of this impact. But unfortunately, our records, our researches, as well as our policy dialogues do not often look at these perhaps idle side of the discussion. So for me, the Sahel is really, really on the front line of climate disasters, climate risk, and other impacts that are driven, not just climate itself. There are pre-existing socio-political challenges that are interplaying with the changing climate variability, and that heavily impacting lives and even influencing, most importantly, poverty and food insecurity that on its or in itself is hugely impacting the dignity of the people. If we talk about climate impacts without talking about the dignity of people, we haven't actually addressed, the issues of, address the climate change in itself. So in the models that are existing in the Sahel, there are quite a number of them, but before mentioning these models, it's important that we also look at some of these critical challenges that needs to be highlighted. For instance, is our adaptation policies or mitigation policies really looking at principally the critical mass of women who are living on the front line, whose lives are totally dependent on natural ecosystem services like water from wells, clean wells, water from natural springs, and living the access to wood, the natural wood for energy to cook their food. This might sound very simple, but this is their life. This is the whole life for them. That pastoralist who lives entirely feeding their animal on pasture, what has happened to this pasture in the past years? What are the physical challenges that are affecting this pasture? And how does the absence of the viability of the pasture affect them entirely, psychologically, socially, as well as economically? That absence threatens first their economic life. It fractures that microeconomic system that they depend upon, as well connecting to their psychological state. People get more violent when they are hungry. They get more violent when they are in a state of lack, or when they're in a state of desperation. So just to say that, apart from mentioning these challenges, we have to look at addressing mitigation and adaptation using the Great Green Wall model by looking at primary microeconomic system that lies in the Sahel, addressing the loss of biodiversity. When I mean biodiversity, I don't want us to look at language. What do I mean by biodiversity? The wetlands that the critical mass of people depend on, it needs to be viable enough to provide microeconomic opportunities that can help the people to have a daily living. The ecosystem services like well water, clean well water, needs to be there for them so that they can have access to good drinking water, because good drinking water is a right. But when this right is absent, dignity is lost. And when dignity is lost, hope is lost. And when hope is lost, life doesn't have any meaning anymore. So these are essentially the way we should look at addressing the challenges that are affecting this critical mass of people, but then most importantly, injecting investment in terms of approaching projects, we should look at the existing models like the Great Green Wall Frontline, how it is addressing climate response in terms of individual lives, family settings, community groups. Often our documents don't tell us about these settings, this specific context of individuals. The women, that young girl in the community who has to go very far to go and fetch wood, or who has to go with her mother, or a mother who is afraid, who has a daughter who is afraid that if she has to go to fetch wood or to fetch water, her daughter can be raped. So we now see the connection between these scarcities as well as human security, making it very important for us to address these things, you know, in a very holistic way, in an integrated approach that addresses both the social aspect, the economic aspect, the psychological aspect, as well as the physical landscape aspect, which is where the primary livelihood and lives of the people depend upon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tabi. As you were just concluding, before I come down to Mr. Ahmed Yusuf and as well as Mr. Abdullahi Muhammadu, who are all here in the audience, what Tabi is just speaking of, let's look at what exactly we are doing in the Gambia and how communities are taking charge of their own destiny. So we will play this video before getting to engage. One sec.
Hundreds of years ago, the Europeans were at the shores of the Atlantic, you know, parking us by and force into those boats and taking us to Europe and the Americas for slave in exchange for things like tobacco. But today, that situation has repeated itself in a much more profound way, where they don't need to come anymore. We voluntarily jump into those boats with even harsher conditions just to get to that land. If people cannot walk their land, we will go in search of greener pasture. This has become a fight for existence, a fight for dignity.
This story is difficult because it's sad now for me. Yeah, this is my life. Came on now, me I'm tired. I'm very tired. The salt is spoiled all.
Our home is ground zero of climate change. Salt has taken over our wetlands where we grow rice, and because of the treelessness of our drylands, significant quantities of fertile topsoil are being washed off. What we used to get in an area of 1 hectare, now you will have to grow 4 hectares. Millions of the Sahel spring water sources have dried up. Native forests that used to provide medicine, food and shelter are all gone. These people leaving are not leaving because of economic reasons. They are leaving because of climate reasons. They are in fact climate refugees. In Africa, we are the insurance policy of our parents. My brother decided to go on this journey to actually emancipate us. He was lost in the Agadez desert for more than a month plus. We couldn't hear from him. I remember those tense weeks when my mother used to call me every day without knowing what to tell her. You know, I cannot confirm if my brother is dead. I cannot confirm if he's alive. My mother's story is not unique. It is the everyday reality of more than 70% of everybody living here. But they say vision is born out of hardship. We, the African people, are united by a dream that loomed large in the hearts and minds of African leaders for many generations now. 10 years ago, the African Union began to work on the Great Green Wall Initiative, an 8,000-kilometer wall of trees across the width of the African continent.
restoring vast swaths of degraded lands, opening new markets to creating dignified jobs and opportunities that give hope to would-be climate migrants. But for a long time, the Great Green Wall has been an initiative of politicians being talked about in the corridors of power.
Many previous attempts at tree planting projects have chosen not to consult, involve, and reward indigenous communities. Millions of the wrong trees have been planted in the wrong places at the wrong time.
We have projects coming and going. Nothing remains in the community because it is always done from a top-bottom approach. These people are never asked. For us to make this wall a reality, it has to really be rooted into the frontline communities, people who are directly involved in growing the walls, the trees that are going to fit in this wall, people who are directly involved in nurturing those trees. It has to be a movement. It has to be creating that unbroken chain of human cooperation across the globe. It's no longer a vision for us.
The frontline movement is here. We are on the ground mobilizing the Sahel, one community, 1 hectare at a time.
All the time da nga gis ñoo xamantene feneen la gaay jógee gaay ñoo def seen projet gaay pare gaay dem projet bi dee sonn nañ bëgguñ Great Green Wall bi mu nekk beneen façon projet bi moo tax ñu taxawal lii pour ñëpp xam lii pour lan la ñu xam ne lii mu ngi jógee si ki nga xam ne moom panafricain la di Thomas Sankara balaa moo dee lii la doon ñaan su fekkente ne place bi téeméer la jëluñ ñaar fukka bi sax soo lii moo tax ñu ne xaaral na ñëpp boole pour affaire si mun a dem kanam. Our parents used to sit around the campfire and share stories. Our night cinema screenings are a replica of this. We go down to communities and show them what the Great Green Wall is and what has been done across the continent. You have the communities all coming out voluntarily because they want to really take charge of their destiny. It's at these screenings that we come in contact with the wisdom keepers of the Sahel. These are the women and men within each community who hold the secrets to living off this land. We bring together these wisdom keepers of the land with representatives from the government and the wider community.
Otonali empower Gardinola, Nim Fanama put into consideration what Fanamukolea.
Together and over several days, they will create the community's blueprint, a written plan for the planting of their section of the wall. Then we organize the district assemblies where we get together the critical mass to disseminate the information across, giving everyone an opportunity to contribute to that district blueprint. Ka kalamuta nduroke alla mol mentata workshop o wa tilisa bolto ka safe atolla sula kol mummente ka wulo jose ñinen ñanta kel ñinen kuti bi lafta men futandi lalma pour mobe saba kalama ko ñimu district kolte. It becomes something that is community owned. We as the communities are tired. We are tired of people patronizing us as if we cannot do it ourselves. In fact, we are stewards. Young people, elderly people, men, women, children, all rising. We want to take charge of our own destiny. Mol bejele mene yalon ko ya agriculture sembentu ya wal mol la baluwo be dande walla natata fenyanta na la nyanta kela.
Projects has been coming here going, but not like this one. This one is an idea which fetched from us.
These are the communities who are now rising to take their destiny into their own hands. Realizing that the vision of the Great Green Wall does not only require new funding or the goodwill and leadership of politicians. What we need is a movement led by the custodian communities, united by the power of 135 million people, working together to protect a place we call home. dem si district ba pare dem si region bi ñun dañ bugg a képp koo xamante ne mu ngi si biir dëkk bi dafa war a xam ne lii ñoom ñoo ko defar.
This time the Pope is sending messages to the 10th.
Thank you very much.
I feel there isn't much more important work than that of the Great Green Wall.
Because you have seen my very
This is my drive, James. This is why I wake up every day to do what I do.
Climate justice. These are some of the things that we are talking about. Sometimes it is personal for us that we have to hide our emotions behind. But climate has come to decimate our way of life, foul our beliefs that we have to actually jump into the boats across the Mediterranean that lies, the bones and the souls of our brothers. I think it is incumbent upon us to kind of get together and figure out how do we change this. And this is the reason why we think that the frontline movement can actually be a way to turn the Great Green Wall from a vision to reality. But before that, let's hear from IFAD that have been doing tremendous work in rural places across the continent and the globe to actually give us some reflections from what you've just seen.
First of all, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dina Saleh. I am the Regional Director for the Near East, North Africa, Europe, Central Asia, and Horn of Africa at IFAD. So I usually say I'm the director of the hotspots, including now, as we're seeing with the current crisis in Europe as well. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, for us, it's a proud partnership that we have with the government of Somalia, spanning over 40 years, where we have been working together hand in hand, as we just saw in the video. It has really been community-led initiatives. What we have also been hearing in the past, and we've heard from some of our speakers before, that this is a region that is compounded by several crises, not just one crisis. We do have, of course, the climate. We also know we have the water scarcity, but in addition to that, we also know that conflict is a threat multiplier in this region. And of course, we also have studies that prove, IPCC studies that have shown, for every 1 degree of increased temperatures, there's a 4% likelihood of conflict occurring. So already we do see that conflict is quite a, climate is quite a perpetrator of conflict. And this is why we also see these young people taking the risks of jumping into boats for these very reasons. Now, I just wanted to also to reflect on something which I think is about when we talk of climate justice. I believe that we do have also as policy makers, but also organizations, where when you look at the distribution of the climate financing, 3% goes to to agriculture, and only 1.6% goes to adaptation. And we have to ask ourselves why this disproportionate financing that goes to where it's needed most, to climate adaptation. The other, which was for me quite astounding, and it was a recent discovery, was that out of the 25 countries that are least able to adapt to climate change, 14 are conflict affected, but one of the 15 top recipients is the DRC. So all the countries that are fragile, conflict affected, are not one of the top 15 recipients of climate financing. And therefore, there is something wrong. And these are the questions we have to ask ourselves in a platform such as COP27. I think this is where we need to start asking such questions. But I'm not here to make now a call for action. I'm just reflecting on certain things. So as I was saying, we worked for 40 years now, hand in hand with the government of Somalia. And what we have been really doing is addressing the compounding and increasing vulnerabilities that the communities and the population in Somalia have been facing. One of them, of course, as we all know, has been, and we're seeing it now, is the increased and pervasive drought that we're facing. you know, the drought that is experienced now in the Horn of Africa has not been witnessed for the last 40 years. And the prognosis is that this is going to continue. So we're looking at 36 million people that are affected in the Horn of Africa right now with the worst drought. Now, together with the partners at IFAD, we have focused on promoting climate-smart farming technologies. And this is not just in Somalia, this has been across the continent, because in IFAD, we like to call ourselves the adaptation experts. And we do have many instruments and financing instruments which we have specifically focused on adaptation. So we have worked on climate-smart farming technologies, sustainable management of water, watersheds, rangelands, working with pastoral communities also, and enhancing technologies for improved livelihoods. And in Somalia, we've been working in Somaliland, in Puntland, and also in Galmudug State. We have also been supporting the dry lands to improve production and productivity, improving nutrition and access to water for drinking and irrigation, but also working in the health and sanitation, promoting also the investments that come from remittances, because this is another area that has not been really tapped into, and I think remittances is a great contributor to some of the development, opportunities that lie. And what we have seen working in Somalia is increased incomes and food security. We have been able to reach 1.78 million direct beneficiaries. And in these, since the 80s, we have been able to invest almost 113 million in Somalia. And for every $1, and I'm so proud of this because we also see ourselves as an assembler of finance, for every $1 IFAD put in Somalia, we were able to leverage $5. So really that is, where the partnership comes in. And I think in all these regions and in Africa, where we're looking also for how can we accelerate, investments, we need to look at the partnerships. We cannot do this alone. The challenges are immense. And I just also like to give you another, this was also something that I learned recently, and I felt this was also something we need to think about, is that when you look at how much per capita of climate financing goes to countries, or to a person in a fragile situation, it's only like $2.1. And in non-fragile situations, it's $116 per capita. So, the financing I'm talking about, 113 million that we're putting in Somalia, can you imagine how much of that if we actually try to create some equilibrium, and how much one person, one individual in Somalia and the rest of Africa, and especially in the Sahel, could also receive. So I don't want to, of course, I have a lot I can continue speaking, frankly, and I'm sure many of us could talk about this. But I'd just like to say we learned a number of lessons, and some of these are: water availability remains the entry point. And we have been working a lot with partners, with the governments in Africa, to look at how we can address the water scarcity problem. The other entry point is job creation. This plays an important role, especially for the young population. The other is the use of local knowledge. We heard in the video, really harnessing the local knowledge and indigenous knowledge that exists. The other is an integrated approach, going with a holistic approach where you have land, water, and nutrition, gender, all this integrated and not working in silos. The other is, of course, strong research and extension linkages, working also with social actions on household, but also on nutrition, and attention to the socio-cultural conditions, which enhances women and youth participation. The last thing I'd like to also add here is that maybe some of you know, some of you don't know, that we have been working with Somalia, but we have also had some debt issues, and of course we understand the conditions in many of the countries that are experiencing challenges, and I'm really pleased because this has been a partnership, and I would say sometimes we call it a labor of love, where we have worked for the last 2 years with the Somali government to really approach development partners and donors to clear the debt of Somalia. Of course, HIPIC has also been quite an active partner with us, and we're now ready to start and unlock millions of dollars in the coming years for Somalia, and to be able really to go that extra mile. And of course, I'm calling on all the other partners in this room and beyond to join us in this call. And the last thing I wanted to say is that we don't want to leave no one behind. So really, everyone should be up with us in this major challenge. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Now, as we know, we don't always want to continue with the panel discussions, and I'm sure there is a lot of engagement on the floor. But before that, I would give to Ahmed Yusuf to actually share some reflections, and then we will then go to
Thank you, and I thank also the other colleagues and friends who are in this event. Good evening, all of you. It's our great pleasure, first of all, Somalia to come up and present and attend the COP27 with a good number of delegation compared to the last year, led by the president and our minister here. And it's also another great pleasure to join and, make sure that Somalis be part of it on Great Green Wall Frontline Initiative. As already some speakers talked on the issues of Somalia is quite different. While the other countries were trying to get and making sure to do some tangible projects and activities in their countries, Somalia was, surviving to come up and to sort out the conflict, which has been existing for our country for quite a long time. But the issues of environment and climate change was not one of the issues that our country was focused. Somalia has been impacted by climate issues, as our minister already mentioned. Almost more than 2 or 3 years, we did not get rain, and that is going to create a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, and a lot of pressure to the local communities. Our communities, most of them are pastoralism, and they depend on 2-3 things. One is the livestock, and another one is the crop production or maybe agriculture, and another one is the issues of fisheries. Most of them, they need to get rain on time. If the rain do not get on time, then the livestock people, maybe the pastoral communities, those who depending on the livestock and those who also depending on the agricultural activities will not continue to survive, because animals, they need the water, they need pasture, and also they need the grazing land issues of management. So all those things have been taking place in our country, Somalia. So the government of Somalia established a full ministry to deal with these issues. So one of the goals that we need to achieve is to see that, to make sure that the health and well-managed natural resources and environment for well-being for Somali people and global environment also. Those are the one of the goals that we need, maybe our big goal to see and working together with within the country, within our different federal member states, within our communities, and also working with the international partners like the UN multilateral environmental agencies, and also working together to the international mechanism like UNFCCC, UNCCD, and UNCBD. Thanks so much, and great to Bart for this event.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf, Managing Director, Somalia Ministry of Environment. I will then go to Abdullahi Mohamadu, the Executive Secretary of SEALS, that is the Permanent Interstate Committee for Drought Control in the Sahel. Mr. Abdullahi, please share us some reflections.
Je vais parler en français. Je crois que le speaker va me traduire tout à l'heure. Madame la ministre, distingués invités, je voudrais d'abord vous remercier de l'opportunité que vous m'offrez de parler de l'expérience d'ICILS. La Somalie, par ses caractéristiques agro-physiques, est pratiquement un pays du Sahel. Et ses populations pratiquent les mêmes activités que les populations sahéliennes. Moi, mes parents élèvent des dromadaires, comme beaucoup de Somaliens, et souvent à l'étranger, on me demande si je ne viens pas de la Somalie. Donc c'est vous dire la proximité entre la Somalie et les pays du Sahel.
Je peux traduire, Excellence.
Okay.
Yes, so there's the Executive Secretary of SEALS, the permanent interstate to fight desertification. It's an old-standing organization since the early 60s. So what he's saying about the resemblance between Somalia and the Sahel. Somalia and the Sahel, they have the same ecosystem, they have the same practices, the same people. And sometimes himself, they are asking him whether he's not from Somalia. Mm-hmm. So Somalia and the Sahel, Somalia is the Sahel. So reason why, of course, you justify why Somalia should be in the Great Green Wall and why not part of the SEALs.
La Somalie est membre de la Grande Muraille Verte comme la plupart des pays membres du SEALS. Et je voudrais dire, comme vous l'avez rappelé tout à l'heure, que le SEALS s'investit depuis 50 ans dans la recherche de la sécurité alimentaire et dans la lutte contre les effets de la sécheresse et de la dégradation des terres.
So SEALs have been working since more than 50 years to enhance sustainable land management and restoration and combat desertification in the Sahel. And most of the members of SEALs are members of the Great Green Wall Initiative.
Nous avons un centre régional qui est basé à Niamey au Niger, qui est spécialement dédié aux questions climatiques.
There's a regional center of excellence that SEALs has developed. Is based in Niamey, in Niger, which is dedicated to climate change.
Nous avons développé sur les 50 dernières années, beaucoup d'outils, que ce soit dans le domaine de la gestion des ressources naturelles ou dans la recherche de la sécurité alimentaire, qui peuvent être autant d'expériences pour la Somalie et pour d'autres pays membres de la Grande Muraille Verte. Pour nous,
over the last 5 decades, SEALs have developed several tools and approaches that can be very useful for Somalia and, of course, for the other member states.
Je voudrais dire que pour nous, la Grande Muraille Verte, c'est un laboratoire qui devrait être utilisé pour la mise à l'échelle de toutes ces technologies, tous ces outils développés par le SEALS et d'autres organisations. Je précise ici que nous travaillons aussi avec l'IGAD sur certaines problématiques liées au changement climatique et à la sécurité alimentaire. Donc je pense que pour finir, je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de choses à faire entre le SEALS ou d'autres organisations du Sahel avec la Somalie. Et je pense que la Grande Muraille Verte est vraiment une grande opportunité dans ce domaine-là. Donc je voudrais inviter respectueusement Madame la Ministre à nous visiter au cours de l'année 2023. Merci.
So first of all, let me say the Executive Secretary of SEALs is inviting Your Excellency to visit the center. And also he said the SEALs have developed a lot of tools and approaches, and that the Great Green Wall serves as a platform through which our member states can apply, test these tools and approaches. And of course, Somalia becoming part of this Great Green Wall family should also be able to adopt these approaches and tools that SEALs have developed over the past 5 decades. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much for your invitation. And I just want to say a few words. I might be a politician, but I have my technical team here from Somalia. And I have, from Somalia, I could see, I have a very young people here, expert. And I believe this gentleman is the oldest one that we have. I have from Somalia, I mean, all these people that from young generations, some of them came from around the world. And the reason that because they haven't been in Somalia on the ground of the civil war. And the reason that most of them, they came around the world to come for their country and support what they study for their country and nation. And that's why we hear for the first time Somalia, more than 50 people came of the COP. And this is the first time in historic. What we hear is to knock. We're here for the COP to knock every door and dig down every door to say we need support. We need in different area in Somalia. So this young generation, that's the pride of Somalia. And we're here as well to communicate as well with the African countries. This is as well the same problems that as well for the climate change we have the same problem in Africa. And what we need as well, Africa and international partner could able to cooperate very seriously issues what's happening in Africa, particularly in Somalia. And I want to say as well the last thing, we are committed for the government of Somalia, especially for President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. He's committed, and our government, we're committed. Young generation are committed, doing for their nation something urgently. And the Great Green Wall, we would want to thank you as well for this great initiative. I believe we're committed to be part of the Great Green Initiative. And I'm sure without Somalia, Great Green, you're missing Somalia. So we need to be part of it. Yes. And I want to thank my team that already that arrived and support Somalia. And we need more as well support from Somalia. And I really thank you for all of you. And thank you. I accept your invitation. I'll be there soon.
Thank you. Now we have about 10 minutes more, but we're going to now open the conversation to the various technical experts that are here from Somalia, from United Kingdom, from UNOWAS. You know, we have to create this unbroken chain of human cooperation. But first, I would like to engage Jonathan Robinson, development expert, who has been working with us on the ground in Gambia to seed the new frontline movement. Jonathan, from the reflections of the honorable ministers and of course the work on the ground, what are your perspectives? What actually can we do to unlock the enterprising spirit of local communities?
Thank you, Kimo. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellencies. It's very nice to be here. I think three things, Kimo, stand out, and you're at the heart of this inspiration. So, and I'm going to cheat because I stole your posters. The first thing I'd say is the inspiration of being in the grassroots, being on the front line. Your solar-powered bus, traveling community to community, is where the spirit of this starts. Second is the science, and you've built a model that is not just about planting a species of tree. It's an ecosystem approach. It's a wise tapping into the elders and their wisdom, but it's also tapping into the best science from around the world to create a really permaculture-based approach to reviving ecosystems holistically, from blue carbon to the enterprising models around moringa. You've cracked it with a new model that deserves to be in every community. And the third thing, and this is where I finish, the movement. What is so beautiful about what you've convened here in this room is the power of the collective. And together we can do so much more than we can on our own. So thank you. Those are the three things you inspire.
I didn't know he was going to do a presentation, but I would like to recognize the presence of my co-lead as well, Maimuna Jabi, sitting right there, quite humble. And of course, not to forget Aidan and Jess, the Art Day team. Civic Gambia is working with Art Day to see how best can we, propel beyond the wetlands as well. And this is why we have all this space here today. So we'd like to extend our thanks and gratitude. Jess and Aidan, thank you so much. But of course, we have the Somali technical team. And I would also like to recognize the presence of Jakite Mamadou from NEPAD and his team. You're very much welcome. But first, I go down to the technical teams. Who do I go first? The oldest first. Respect.
I'm not sure if I am older than him anyway. Yeah. Okay. I've been given 2 minutes. First of all, Your Excellencies and our Minister, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Dina, we recognize you too. Thanks. I just stood up to make one comment, gentleman of sales. And he invited us for partnership. I want to tell him and thank you. As a partnership and network development expert, I did an study from SADC, sales, FSNWG, CESAN, all those things. From East Africa to Latin America and the Caribbean. And I assure you what I have seen in sales is the most exhaustive and excellent work which you do. And we are grateful to come and see that. Thank you.
Well, before we could go, Madam Gozi, then we can come to the gentleman here.
Hello, is it on?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the excellent panel. I have 2 questions, one for you, Honorable Minister. I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit more about the priority support that is needed for women and girls that live in areas affected by climate change. Tabi Yoda earlier said that women are the ones fetching water, fetching wood, and so on. What is the priority support needed in terms of climate adaptation for women in Somalia? And then a broader question about the Great Green Wall Frontline Initiative. We are here at the COP27. There are so many different partners, so many different donors. You will go to some places and there will be a flag of each organization supporting something. So when you arrive in areas like that, how do you manage the coordination with other actors? How do you fold in other organizations like IFAD, for example, into the Frontline Initiative so that it just becomes one coherent and sustainable process? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Gozi. I will let the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. It's a very good question. And about the Somalian women and the girls, they're the one that most of the victim of the climate change, because they're the one that always rely because of the men's of a culture side for the security sector, for the climate issue, for the culture, they're unable to have a job. So the woman, she's the one that main important could able to find a job. She's the one that need to find the water for their children and feed them. So what happens is in Somalia, specifically they went off to the rape because of the long distances that they walk, because of the security of the walk, because of the food areas, and the girls. So what we're working on it now to have development of the training them up to know their rights, and how can able to support of the education areas. So this is already now the Minister of Environment and Climate Change almost now is 3 months, and it's really new. So this is the area that we need to focus at the moment, and still we're working on it. How can we able to support for the culture and the women and the girls for those particular areas, that how can we support them? So we're working on it now, but they're really facing a biggest problem for the girls and the women, especially in the climate areas. So we're focusing on it and we're working out soon, inshallah.
Just to answer Ngozi's question on the front line and how we are partnering with other organizations. Of course, we are stretching arms out to various institutions, but primarily it's been a lot difficult. You know, sometimes behind these doors, you know, we hear a lot of billions being spoken about, and of course the various institutions that they are being distributed to. But, you know, on the ground it's really a different story. It's only that you have to reach out to, you know, people like Civic or some kind of other private sector financing to be able to get the ground actions going, because the means of accessing some of those finance is quite difficult. Because when I ask the farmers, the herders and the fishers, what do you want to do? It's just one paragraph. And then in order to be able to access some of these finance, we have to write pamphlets, which those people don't have expertise. So the involvement of those middlemen, at the end of the day, what we see is just a group of people come to our communities with their pickups, establish their project management unit. After 3 years, they phase out, project dies, and we hear that it's $25 million. I was like, yo, why don't we split this across all these farmers and their lives will change immediately? So we need to kind of have those enhanced democratization of funding flows reaching African-based entities whose hands are directly into the soil. So that's why we came here, in order to reach out to different partners, IFAD, the Adaptation Fund, and all other partners that are involved to kind of help to unlock this movement. But I see IFAD wants to come in, please, and then we have less than 3 minutes.
Sure, very quickly, I just wanted to add to that is, I think one of the important factors in this is government needs to be on the driving seat. So to channel and have a strong donor coordination system on the ground so that when all these financing streams are coming through, the government knows where to prioritize and there's no duplication of efforts. So for example, like for the Great Green Wall Initiative, IFAD has been commissioned or selected by the GCF to implement the Great Green Wall Initiative. So we're covering now the Sahel region and extending now to Sudan and Djibouti in the second phase. But, and of course, we're now waiting for Somalia to come in, of course, but what we want to ensure is that we're not just, it's not IFAD alone, but when we work with the partners, that there's some coherence in the system.
Thank you. I think we are coming to almost the end of the event, so I will allow a gentleman from Somalia.
Yes, hello. My name is Dr. Bedel Ahmed Hassan. I am the Principal Forest Advisor for the Ministry. It is actually more than, we are great happy that now Great Green Wall is coming to Somalia. For us, trees is more than everything. The production function and the service function are equivalently important. Our food production is based on forest for free grass production livestock system. And now the water as well, that the few rains that we are receiving actually discharged to the Indian Ocean because of lack of water evacuation, because of the deforestation. So we are very happy and we like to be actively part of that.
My name is Adif Tahared, I'm from Somalia. I would like to ask this question, my brother from Nigeria, the Director General Yusuf Maina, the National Agency of the Great Green Wall. Somalia is joining Great Green Wall. So I would like to know what are the success approach? Yeah, what are the success approach can Somalia learn from Nigeria?
Yes. Thank you very much, Excellencies. Thank you very much, invited guests. Those who flew from around the world to support their government, that is very impressive. Well, the answer was rather partially answered by time. You work with the grassroots, and the few rains that you are going to receive, or you've been receiving, you should make the best part of it. When it's onset when the rainfall, when the rain starts, you mobilize and then make the best use of it before it succeeds. And then adopt strategies that could utilize water. Your neighbor started long ago. Someone said 40 years ago, you have not experienced a drought. It happened in the 70s, 80s when we were born, when Bono and his team went and gave Ethiopia at that age. So you're also experiencing that follow changing climate because of your activities, of course, deforestation and the rest. So you should change. Ethiopia adopted the terrace farming, the steppe agriculture, also adopt that energy strategies that could be beneficial to you. The time is short. Sorry.
Thank you very much. I think we are almost at the closing. So I would like to thank our panelists. We are really out of time. I am so much, I think.
Wait. 1 second. Yes,
Doctor, please.
Please, Jakite Mamadou of AFR 100 is one of the programs that would accompany Somalia. Also, I'm putting him on the spot to say something about Somalia. Please, Jakite, tell us how much money you are bringing to Somalia.
I will not tell how much money we are. It will take me less than 1 minute. We met, this woman is an action-oriented doer. We met her technical team prepared the work, but we met 2 days ago. In less than 24 hours, she signed Somalia joining AFR1. Stand up for her and up and clap for her, please. So this is a very good sign. This is a very good sign that Somalia is ready. Now let's work. Now let's work to bring investment to Somalia for land restoration, for the Great Green Wall, and for AFR 100. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The Great Green Wall ambassador wants to say something. I can't refuse, but you have 20 seconds to do so.
This is just to conclude that we have all had the different perspectives, and you asked a very technical question. There are two things: opportunity costs between gun and investment in nature. Your government has to understand that investing in nature is the most sustainable long-term investment anywhere than guns can provide. Security of humanity, security of women, security of people has to be based on human security, providing systems that work for people, that help the people, that enhance their dignity, that sustain their livelihood entirely through nature. Thank you.
Thank
Elvis,
you very
you can have
much.
your closing
Yeah.
remarks.
I know. We are overrun our time. I think my own is to say thank you to Diakite for reminding all of that announcement. I will remind Her Excellency that SEALS is waiting for you on the 5th of January. I will remind Civic that they have an engagement to go to Somalia. I will remind the representative of the President of Nigeria that we want to see Somalia in the Great Green Wall recognized with a stamp. And I'm going to remind myself as the African Union that we are going to continue this support. And I'm calling on all of us sitting here to join force with all of us. I know the youth are here, the women are here. Join force so that the Great Green Wall, AFR 100, should become a reality. These are all Africa Union programs. And for a program to be Pan-African, it must touch all the African member states that are in need. So on behalf of my colleagues from Auda NEPAD, on behalf of the Africa Union, on behalf of all of us sitting here, the civil society organization, the frontline, all of you are frontliners. So I would say, Your Excellency, thank you for this opportunity. We thank our director from FIDA, our representative of UNCCD. UNCCD had already pledged that they were going to support this Somali application, and guided by our president, I will say thank you, and let's call it a day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Because before we leave, I always like to have this, a family photo will come next, but of course we have this declaration in